Welcome to an historic edition of City Talk. And by historic, of course, I mean we're in the middle of the global pandemic and life is weird. Kathryn Vargas of the Department of Parks and Rec is not weird. She's quite normal and quite an excellent city employee. Kathryn, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us what your position is there and a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So I am the Assistant Director of Community Recreation in the Department of Parks and Recreation. And I get to do a lot of really cool stuff. I get to work primarily on our programs and facilities that work with youth and families. So that would be, we have 10 recreation centers, 18 pools, our spray parks, our youth sports leagues, our summer foods program, our community art cart and enrichment festivals, our summer after school. So a lot of really great things that the city's doing to support young people.
That is quite a big full plate you have between all the rec centers and the pools, et cetera. A lot of recreational facilities that you guys are in charge of. How do you handle all that?
Well, we're lucky to have a really awesome team, and I'm newer to my position. I've been here for about 6 months or so, but we have supervisors that help kind of run the day-to-day on the ground work that's happening out at all of our centers, and then myself, our director, and those folks who are in the office, we kind of help make sure that the policies and practices that we're doing here at the city mirror what's going on the ground at our centers and through our programs.
So I assume during the global pandemic, businesses slowed down considerably. In fact, they're not open, I suppose.
So while our centers aren't open, business has not slowed down too considerably. We are participating in the emergency food distribution in the city at 5 of our centers. And so we have a number of staff who are activated in that way. And honestly, we've been working on a lot of planning, making sure that we're ready to go as soon as we're able to safely start to interact with community again.
I'm guessing a lot of people don't know that the city and the Parks and Rec Department specifically is that involved with emergency food distribution.
Yeah, not only emergency, but even last summer, on a regular summer, we delivered 120,000 meals between our own sites, and then we have about 40 partner organizations that we work with to make sure that we can get food out to kids in the summertime, because a lot of kids are reliant on the schools to provide food during the school year. So when summer hits, there's a gap in food access for those children. So we do school lunches every year, and it's also a part of our programming as well.
And how long have you been with the city?
A little over 8 months.
All right, yeah, we talked to another newbie over at Domi, Kim Lucas, who you know, and she was very enthusiastic as you are. Sounds like you really enjoy working for the city and you just really like your job in general.
Yeah, it's a great job. It's a great place to be. Our team is awesome. And it's, we even get to work, for example, with Kim. I know her well, and she's in a different department than ours. So it's been really neat to be part of a team, not just that our internal team working well together, but across departments. We do a lot to interact with each other and make sure we're supporting each other in our work.
Before I ask you for some background, how are you coping with all the weirdness?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. I have a dog, which is wonderful because I decided to get Sophie, about half a year before this happened. So had I not made that move, I wouldn't have anyone to talk to, honestly. So that's been great. Work has still been really busy. So I think that's been actually helpful for me. If there's anything else that I've learned from this, it's that I've been connecting more with my family. And that's been kind of a nice for me to realize, hey, I should FaceTime with them more often. So I've been doing okay. I've been fortunate to be doing all right.
And at any time during all of this, has the dog begun to talk back?
Not yet. Okay. But if that happens, I know I'll have to call some folks to help me figure that one out. But.
All right, tell us where you're from originally.
So I moved to Pittsburgh from Loudoun County, Virginia, which is kind of outside the DC area.
And where did you go to school?
I went to Pitt to get my master's in social work.
And that's how you ended up here?
Yep, and I actually thought that I was going to go right back to the Virginia, Maryland area after school, but 2 years in and I fell in love with the city and I've stayed ever since. It's been 12 years now.
So you, if all had gone as originally planned, you'd be a social worker somewhere in Virginia now. And instead you work for the government in the city of Pittsburgh. But there are aspects of social work in your current job, like the food distribution you were just talking about.
Yeah. I actually feel like, public service and social work have a lot in common. And there's a couple of social workers that are in the city county building in different various areas. And for me, social work has always been more of a way of approaching work. You can kind of be a social worker in a lot of different ways. So I do feel like my role is still very much social work related.
I worked in Parks and Rec for the first year I was with the city. As you know, I'm now with the Department of Innovation and Performance, but a lot of people would ask me initially, so is it just like Amy Poehler in that TV show? Do you get that a lot?
I do get that a lot. All my friends, that's how I got them to understand what my job was. Like for people who don't live in Pittsburgh, I was like, Parks and Recs, like Amy Poehler, she's the assistant director. You know what? It's fun like that. I think our department is a lot of fun. We're a good group of people. We work really hard. I'm not, crazy like Amy Poehler is, but I will do what it takes, to get a job done. So yeah, that's fun. We joke around like that in our office too.
Cool. And is Parks and Rec the title a bit of a misnomer? Because you really have to do more with recreation. The Department of Public Works has more to do with the maintenance of the parks.
Yeah, we do work really closely with Department of Public Works, who does all of the maintenance of the outside park spaces. We might do some programming in the parks, but even still, like public safety houses our farmers markets and the park rangers, and they're also engaged in park spaces. We definitely get a lot of people who will call us around issues that might be better suited for Department of Public Works, but we have a good communication line to get those through. But yeah, our role definitely, we have to engage a lot of different departments to do the work that we do.
Right. And a lot of people, I think, also don't know, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, but I'm still surprised to find people, when I tell them about it, about the several senior centers that serving the needs of people 60 plus. A lot of camaraderie, a lot of neighborhood type things. People become sort of an extended family. Talk a little bit about the senior centers, if you would, or I should call them the healthy active living centers.
Healthy active living centers. Yeah, I was surprised to learn how much we do as well. We have 13 that are activated across the city. We also play an important role of providing meals to seniors. A lot of community there. We also provide a lot of transportation to doctor's appointments, to field trip kind of things, or groups can go together and do different things, to grocery shopping. I mean, it's a really heavy lift. I think we're one of the largest in the city providers of those services to seniors.
And you also do a lot of stuff for children, and you normally would have summer camps for the kids, but I guess that's up in the air right now, depending on how things roll out over the next few weeks.
Yep, we are planning for all different possibilities. We want to be able to serve families as best we can, and while keeping them as safe as possible, for sure. This was going to be my first summer too, so imagine that. I get to have like 8 plans for summer. We'll see which one happens.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you do virtual summer camps? I don't even know.
So yeah, we have a lot of partners actually that we've already engaged in conversations around trying to get more virtual learning out there for families, realizing that that's a gap, particularly in the summertime. So yeah, we've been working at that to try to get different opportunities available. We've been working with the Jewish Healthcare Foundation and the possibility of actually having intergenerational learning opportunities happening across the city. And we're also looking at ways to be able to do some activities, provide activities that might go along with our food distribution sites. So they might be by paper, or we might have an activity that, as a young person, family kind of come through to pick up meals, they also can come and pick up some enrichment engagement that their child can do at home, if in the event that we're unable to provide our typical summer. So we're planning for everything.
Did you have any initial impressions of what government might be like, and has anything surprised you as a result?
I actually was really excited to transition into this role. I had worked in nonprofits prior to this pretty much my entire career. So being in the city, it's been great for me to kind of learn how government approaches a similar type of work when it comes to serving the needs of the community, and a lot of really dedicated people. I mean, I truly think that the majority of people who get into this work get into it because they want to be public public servants. So, that's what you see when you go into the building. And I know our team, we work really hard to do what we can to serve the residents of Pittsburgh.
What neighborhood did you land in?
So I live in Squirrel Hill.
And how do you like that?
I like it a lot. Yeah, I've been here for, how long have I lived here? About 5 years. Before that, I lived in East Liberty. I do consider myself an East Ender. It would be weird for me if all of a sudden I was on the north side or something. It would totally throw me off. I'd have to readjust my whole, where I go. So I like living in this part of town. It's been fun.
What do you consider the major challenges ahead for Parks and Rec as the years go on? I know revenues are down, so that's not going to help anybody. But other than that, what are you able to accomplish, or what are you trying to accomplish?
Well, we have a couple of initiatives that we're working on now. One is around increasing technology access and broadband access, and what role our recreation centers can play in that. And so we have an initiative called Rec to Tech. We have a wonderful Max Dennison is his name. I don't know if you interviewed him. You should interview him. He's on our team who helps to manage that project. We're also working on some major facility improvements of some of our centers. So making sure that as we continue to build the programming that we're offering, that we're able to keep all of our facilities up to par, and that every community has access to those things. We're working on greater partnerships with others. So in places where maybe we can't facilitate those things, we could still have a presence through a community partner. So a lot of I would say our future, what we're looking at are ways that we can continue to scale our work, keep it, high quality, and be able to serve more residents through it.
Sounds like there's a ton of relationship building, and partnership is really key to doing what you do.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I enjoy, actually, before I joined the city, I was a partner of the city. So now I get to do that work from the other side. But yeah, there is, because we can't do this by ourselves. And particularly when it comes to serving kids, we have to be, as much as possible, communicating with those organizations that are, working with our kids the most. And a lot of those are other youth serving programs, folks who might even bring kids to our pools. We have a lot of summer camps that we work with in a typical summertime to make sure that we're facilitating that access. So yeah, we work with a lot of people to do our work.
I've asked several guests on CityTalk if they had that idea in their mind of the stereotypical bureaucrat who doesn't do much. How have you found that to be true or not true, or how have you found that?
It's definitely not true. Yeah, it's definitely a place where you find a lot of really hardworking people. I've been, it's been a great experience, and I think that our city is, I think this COVID situation currently is a perfect example of how people have been keeping, the city has been busy through this entire time, and on all levels, people have been working really hard to make sure residents have what they need in this uncertain time.
What kind of a dog do you have?
She's a mixture of a lot of things, and I think she's sleeping upstairs. Otherwise, okay. I should have totally staged a dog. You're gonna have to.
We'll do it again.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll interview the dog.
Her name is Sophie. Oh, that would be fun. Yeah. And she is a mix of a dachshund, a terrier, like a mountain terrier, Pekingese, and Chihuahua.
Wow, that sounds like one weird looking dog.
No, she's adorable. I'll follow up with a photo so everybody
All right, please do.
If you're ever in the city county building, folks, come by. I'll have a picture of Sophie. You can see she's very cute.
We're not allowed to bring our dogs in, though, right? We can't bring the dogs into the city county building.
I
know the mayor had the River the dog. That was the official dog, and that dog was allowed. Well,
I've joked about it in my office a couple of times. Nobody has blatantly said, no, that's a terrible idea. But okay. I'll keep bringing it up. I mean, now it feels like I get to work with her every day. So
because you do. Kathryn Vargas of Parks and Rec, really nice talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us on this historic and weird edition of CityTalk.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
We'll be back with Councilman Bobby Wilson from the North Side in a moment. Welcome back to City Talk, and say hello to, from the North Side, Councilman Bobby Wilson. Councilman Wilson, welcome to the program.
All right, thanks for having me.
So I'll ask you the obvious question first. How on earth are you coping with the global pandemic?
Well, it's interesting. Both my wife and I, we both work full time. Very fortunate to still have jobs, but there are the challenges of having 3 young children around when you're trying to do some work. So I definitely can empathize with the parents who are at home with their kids. I got this earpiece here, this Bluetooth earpiece. I was always against the Bluetooth earpiece, but whenever you're on kid duty and you got to take a call, it's easy to have a couple free hands.
I've been reading a lot about people having difficulty coping, and I'm sure the kids are also having difficulty coping, but the parents as well. You say when you're on kid duty, do you flip a coin?
We schedule it. So luckily or fortunately, the Microsoft Outlook, she uses Outlook as well. So we're able to share calendars that way. So,
but is it tough just being cooped up?
It's not as bad as others probably, because we have some decent amount of property. Being in the city, once you get up in the hills, you got a little bit of a backyard. We have a little bit more than a postage stamp, so we can at least get out a little bit. And they love playing in the backyard, so that's our go-to.
Good for you. That's actually excellent.
How are you holding up?
Pardon me?
How are you holding up?
I'm holding up okay. It's just what can I say? I get out for exercise walks. I do the occasional grocery shopping. I try to stay sane.
You're doing City Talk?
I'm doing City Talk, exactly. It's just like one big, long acid trip. You know what I mean? You just got to keep telling yourself it's going to be over with sooner or later. So I'm told. So I was really interested in your acceptance speech when you first became a councilman a few months ago, because your family had been personally affected by the government or actions of the government. Tell us about that, if you would.
Yeah, I live in the house that my grandparents purchased with the money from 2 eminent domains. So they experienced eminent domain twice on the north side, and the house that I live in on Spring Hill, that was where they ended up after being displaced from Allegheny Center, where the Allegheny Center Mall exists right now, and you have that big circle, the one-way circle. And so they had a house there in Allegheny Center, and then they had a house where 279 highway comes through. There was a part of Lockhart Street right down there in Dutchtown that basically the streets went further out. They were all cut off. There was a whole neighborhood throughout that valley that was decimated. So,
and
yeah,
were they happy?
They ended up moving up to Spring Hill because of the hill. My grandfather actually thought that, or he would say, if they're going to move me again, they're going to move this hill. He used a few expletives, but
Yeah, so they were none too pleased with having to move twice, I'm sure, especially when it turns out, at least most of what I've read indicates Allegheny Center is not considered a big success when it comes to urban planning.
Right. They definitely were not happy. That was a lot of what urban renewal was supposed to be back then, and the way that the state and also local government kind of viewed it as well. And we're seeing that doesn't work at all. That actually we're trying to make that street right now that goes around Allegheny Mall, or the old Allegheny Center Mall, which is now the home of Nova Place. That circle, we have it in the budget this year where we're going to actually bring that street back so it looks like a neighborhood street, 2-way, just so it doesn't look like some big highway going around neighborhoods.
That's funny. I remember it used to be 2-way and then they switched it. But how do you make a street look more neighborhoody? I'm intrigued by that because I'm a North Sider and I'm around that circle often.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now it's just a parking lot whenever there's a rush hour. So it's best to divert that traffic right to the highway instead of people using that as a parking lot. I mean, I'm never on that street where there's traffic because I I just know not to drive on that street around 4 o'clock. Well, this is pre-COVID, but the story is that that's just a waiting area for people to get on the highway, and that after a ball game or whatever. So let's just divert that straight to the highway and let people get out of the area quicker. So it's going to be two-way. We're going to put up different street lights, actually there'll be more room for everyone to access the street. So whether you're walking, biking, or you're using your car.
I'm really intrigued by that. I look forward to seeing those changes. What were your expectations coming into government? Because you're relatively new to being a city council person. And how has that changed? And of course, or how did it end up being? And of course, how have you been able to cope in terms of running the office during this crisis?
Well, that's a lot packed into that question. So you were saying, first off, you're asking how am I surprised by anything?
Yeah, what'd you think was going to be like, and what, if anything, has surprised you about what it's actually like?
Yeah, I have to say, campaigning, people ask you, what is the first thing you're going to do? What's the first piece of legislation that you're going to do? And you talk about your priorities that you want to accomplish in office and how those priorities are going to fit into legislation. And we're going to, whether it be by resolution or we're going to change the code. But quite frankly, my first piece of legislation was just an adjustment to the 2019 budget, so that it can actually, it was just a minor correction that could be made. And it wasn't even, it came through my committee in a very, very common way, which, it starts out in a department. It could be city planning. I'm land use and economic development. So under my committee is city planning, PLI. And, there could be some legislation that they're working on. They pass it on to the mayor's administration, and that has to be due by Wednesday. The mayor's administration looks it over, and then they send it over to the city clerk on the council side by Friday. And then we have our regular meeting on Tuesday. And so that will show up on the agenda. And so there's lots of different legislation, different types of legislation. And so, that's what surprised me the most, is just how frequently legislation is moving forward. And you're really the city council is the engine that keeps everything. It's the body that keeps everything together in city government, so that everything, whether it's budgetary, it comes through us, and we then enact the mayor to be able to authorize that. So it was very interesting to see that, the answer to that question is, what is the first piece of legislation you're going to do? Everyone's looking for, how are you going to change housing rights? How are you going to change, how are you going to impact the communities that need it the most? That was a big part of my campaign, is looking at the communities and really trying to put forward implement legislation and change processes on how we can improve, what's taking place in these areas. But still that's still part of the plan. But it's just interesting to know just how much detail goes into each meeting that comes through council, just because it's there's different things that each department could be working on, and there's a process to get that to the table.
Are you a natural politician who's really comfortable with people, or have you sort of had to learn as you go along?
Well, I'm comfortable in the way I like to, I come from a family where people think that I'm funny. And so I'm able to say some jokes. I'm used to saying a joke. And I'm used to, being able to present myself in a way where, I want to be known. I want to get the subject known. But I mean, being involved with politics is extremely different. I mean, you have to, saying it. I mean, you're a comedian. I saw that you have a little stand-up comedian show you do, or somewhere where you bring people together and you try and make people laugh. Politics isn't like that at all. So although I'm comfortable being around people and trying to find commonality with them, there definitely is a huge legislative process that is, I'm still learning it ongoing, and I think people learn it even 4 years into it. So I think it's definitely a skill that a really good legislator, they just continue to evolve to learn the city code and to understand how we can change it for the people that live in the city.
So you grew up in the neighborhood in which you're currently living?
Yeah. I grew up 2 doors down the street. So my mom still lives there.
That's a very Pittsburgh story.
It is
I
a very
assume you really like that. I mean, this is your neighborhood. You really feel at home, obviously.
I do. I feel very much at home.
So what do you see as legislative priorities going forward? That's a wide open question, but anything in particular that you're going to be focusing on as the months go on and years, hopefully?
Yeah, so I have 3 priorities, and I addressed some of these in my opening remarks before I took, the day I was sworn in. So, I can start there. Vacant abandoned property. Basically, how we're improving the city process of having to allow for better land recycling. I think there definitely could be some better partnerships and implementation with the land bank and how demolition happens. I think we can improve, the way that we identify the properties, condemned properties that will be demoed, and whether or not we can implement some strategies to work with the actual neighborhood groups. So if there are ones that, could be put back into, making that neighborhood flourish, I think that's important that we recognize, which ones can still be utilized and will be useful. Also for small business, there could be a lot of small business education, especially during these times of COVID-19. How businesses can survive through a pandemic like this, but specifically even prior to COVID happening, we'll do more or less a 101 on how the permitting process happens and how they really enter into, falling within, everything that they need to have to run a business in the city. So it's, I don't want small businesses get in a situation where, they don't have the right type of occupancy so that they can continue to run. I mean, right now, I in my district, I have a print shop that is under Firewatch, and Firewatch they're paying like $1,000 a week because this property was transferred a long time ago. There's not a check in the box to make sure that if there was an existing sprinkler system, is there, are they, basically this one isn't on the list to be checked. And so somehow it was identified, and until they go through the right permitting process, which is going to take some time, they're going to pay $1,000 a week for someone to monitor that property in case there's a fire. So there's someone sitting in a car every half hour. They get out and they walk through the building to see if there's a fire happening. So that's the most extreme thing that can happen, but essentially, you really want to make sure that a lot of these old buildings don't have a certificate of occupancy. You want to make sure people know how to acquire that and to do it in a way that's not going to prevent their business from making money at the same time. But the most important part that we really need to build legislation around is the vulnerable communities in our neighborhoods, especially ones that are now hit by COVID-19. So I'm definitely concerned with how families have been affected and how I want to see I want to see my office help in that way.
I noticed both of us have stark backgrounds, just a white wall. Are we minimalists, or do we have something to hide, do you think? You don't have to answer that.
I'm sitting in a spot where I take all the council calls, and It is a white wall. Yeah, I'm in this redone attic space that it has like a slanted wall, so you don't really hang things on a slanted wall, you know.
Yes, fair
I guess I
enough.
could put something back here, but I mean, it really allows for me to do one of those fake backgrounds. You
Yes,
know,
that's
this is
true.
like my green wall. This is my green wall.
There you go. What's the best way to people for people to get a hold of you during this strange time?
People get a hold of us on several different platforms. The best way is to email us at district1 at pittsburghpa.gov. You can also call us at 412-255-2135. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. My staff answers text messages. So there's several different ways that someone can get in touch with us. And we, quite frankly, people reach out to us in all those different ways. And also our feedback. If you go online to District 1, there's a feedback form that you can fill out.
All right. Well, Councilman Bobby Wilson, thank you so much. Delightful talking to you, and good luck coping with all the weirdness as we go forward.
All right. Thanks for your time.
That's this edition of City Talk. We'll see you down the road.